probably goes another 1 or 2 feet down into the ground. We'll see. Sometimes they burn down to the ground and then everything below it is gone. There's also fired clay right here, which would have been part of the earthen material added to the roof and the walls of this building. Yes, sir.
What about all that mound material? They didn't have artifacts in it?
It did, and it does. We find a lot of artifacts in here. And in 1986, David Moore, one of the co-directors of this project with me and Rob Beck, did excavations into intact mound deposits. And he found a considerable number of artifacts, including, we think, including Spanish olive jar fragments. Now, we still have to determine how the deposit he found it in relates to the mound, but it seems to be a layer of mound fill. The significance being that layer of the mound wouldn't have been built until the Spanish olive jar was here with the Juan Pardo expeditions. They did bring wine with them, and it's likely that they transported wine in olive jars, which were in the Mediterranean and in the Iberian Peninsula were used for holding olive oil and wine.
You got any test cores on the rest of the field?
We've collected artifacts from the ground surface, and we've placed some excavation units as far down as the parking lot goes. We haven't found quite as much as we'd like, and we need to work more there. That's the area where the Native American settlement seems to be placed. There was a mound here, and then probably a plaza on the other side of it. There was a large post. Native American towns often had very large posts, like flagpoles at the major centers of our towns today. And then on the other side of the plaza were probably domestic structures and other domestic activity areas. One more question.
Each one of these structures was probably a barracks or something?
Yes, we think that these were like barracks. Now, Pardo arrived here with 125 soldiers, and then he left about 25 or 30 of them here permanently. So periodically there would have been gatherings of 100 to 200 soldiers here, along with all the Native American people who would come to meet Pardo and his soldiers. But on a day-to-day basis, there probably would have been more like 20 or 30. Periodically, some of those 30 went on forays into the surrounding area. One of those was led by Sergeant Hernando Moyano, who with a company of Native American warriors from Joara and some of his own soldiers, went up into southwestern Virginia or eastern Tennessee or both to participate in raids on Native American villages. And it would seem that he was also interested in prospecting and looking for metals and gemstones. And they even had a silversmith with them. They didn't find any silver. I mentioned the road from Santa Elena to Zacatecas, Mexico. Zacatecas, Mexico is the location of a very productive silver mine. And it generated vast amounts of wealth for the Spanish colonial empire throughout the Americas. And they were transporting silver across the Caribbean, across the Gulf, where they were vulnerable to pirates and to a variety of other people interested in taking it away from them. So the Spanish colonial empire was interested in an overland route to transport silver from Zacatecas to the Atlantic coast, and from there to ship it back to Spain. The silver in Zacatecas again generated vast amounts of wealth beginning in the 1840s. So all Spanish colonial expeditions in North America had an interest in identifying deposits of silver. They never found it. As many of you know, gold was discovered in parts of North Carolina in the 1800s. The Spanish came close, but they didn't quite get it. If they had, history probably would have been very different because they would have made more of an attempt, more of an effort to maintain a claim to this area. As it was, the collapse of Fort San Juan ended the Spanish colonial ambitions in the northern edge of what was then La Florida. Let's move on from here to right over there on the right side of that western Piedmont tent.